Hi everyone, this is Danielle Steadman and I'm the host of Dogman Diaries. Happy 4th of July everyone, and tonight we are having a special 4th of July episode. So I would like for everyone to meet my guest, Jay Wesson. Are you there, Jay?
Yes ma'am, I'm right here.
How are you tonight, Jay?
I'm doing really good. How are you?
Pretty good. Are you having a good 4th of July?
Well, as good as it can be if you're working it, so yeah.
Right, I know how you feel there. Well, Jay, before we get started tonight, why don't you go ahead and tell everybody, just a little bit about yourself. Give us a little bit of background information, if you don't mind.
Well, I'm almost 50 years old. I live in Texas, as I'm sure a lot of you can tell just how I'm talking. I ran kind of the gambit on this as far as what I've done through my life. I've been lucky. I've actually done stuff that I could scratch off my bucket list early. I've had quite the adventure through life, actually. I did some time in the military and did some time in the fire service, the EMT service, and winded up working as an engineer. And I love every minute of it. I've got a great family. They support me 100%, and I can't complain.
Well, it sounds like you had a very interesting life, and at least you have a very good support system behind you. Speaking of family, this encounter that we're about to hear, do they know of your encounter?
Yeah, they do. I'm not sure what they think about it, to be honest with you. I think they about half believe me, but they really don't know what to believe. But they know I wouldn't lie to them, but they're just not sure, And I think any of us that's had an encounter and tried to share it knows how that goes. Some of them kind of shake their head to either tell you you're crazy or just take it with a grain of salt.
You are definitely right there. Some people can wrap their brains around it, while other people just kind of shake their heads and are like, okay, I don't know about this story. So you're right about that. But it does sound like, your family, considering who you are, and I've talked to you in the pre-interview, and you seem like a pretty wonderful person to me. I'm fairly sure they believe you. So, you are more than welcome. I only speak the truth, though. But I'm pretty sure your family, I would kind of bet that they do believe this. Well, Jay, I'm not going to really hold you up. I want to go ahead and get right into this story because I do find it very interesting. And if you'll begin, because you kind of have sort of like a 3-4 part story. So you begin wherever you want to, and we'll just go from there.
Alrighty, will do. I'll try to make this as easy to comprehend as I can. I found out some facts, but as we talked as recently as a few weeks ago, that really made me add 2 and 2 together. And even talking to you, I put 2 and 2 together again. And for years, I found out I've been getting 5, but here lately, I added it up to 4. So before my actual encounter took place, there were things that happened around where I lived and that I told you, I didn't realize that knowing what I know now, it had been around a lot longer than what I had first realized. We lived out in the country, and I was raised up a lot like you were, hunting and fishing and even running a little trap line here and there. And at 13, 14 years old, I would disappear for a couple of days and just go camping. It was normal. And so I knew what was around me, and as far as, the wilderness goes and stuff, and knew what to listen for and look for. And as far as I knew, I went by the train of the school of thought that there wasn't nothing out there that was going to hurt you down here in this area anyway. Well, come and eat you anyway. My encounter when I figured out that this thing worked, when I saw it, I was actually coming back. I was about 16 at the time, and I was coming back from a little hunting excursion, and had some game on me that I had shot. My little 410 shotgun that my daddy had got me, and that's really all I ever carried. Didn't have any ammo with it, so basically I had a 3-foot club and some bloody bait hanging around my waist. So I'm walking home, and the sun had just, it was in the fall, and the sun had just dipped below the horizon, and I was walking on a white gravel road. It wasn't what you would call twilight. There wasn't no light gonna play tricks on you. There was plenty of light. Our place paralleled this road, and there we had a 5-strand barbed wire fence that I usually just would walk up to about dead even with the house and just hop the fence and take off across the field and, make a beeline, go home. I was just about to do that, and I don't know if I interrupted a meal or a nap or what, but I didn't hear anything until this thing burst out of the brush on my left side. And when it did, it was about, I'll stick it in the middle, it was about 30 feet away from me, so there was no mistaking what I saw. And it wasn't one of these things that was 8, 9, 10 feet tall. I'm just about 6 feet, and it was maybe a head taller than I was, but it was very muscular and, of course, covered with hair. Very canine in nature, very stout, deep-chested, narrow-hipped. I really got to look at some details, and I think one reason is because there is a moment in the encounter that is just burned into my memory, and that's when he was in the middle of the road. He was running across the road in front of me, and he turned his head and he growled and snarled at me. It was pretty much an underwear-changing moment, but I still get kind of, you have to excuse me for stammering a little bit, but it still kind of rattles me when I go to tell him about it. As we talked, I think we discussed the huge head that some of these things are reported to have, and the head in this thing was not improportionate to its body. Everything was proportionate, except it had a huge mane, and that's the only way I can describe it, is a huge mane. It was very dark in color. I was black with just some hints of gray, like it was aging or something. I think it had some age on it. About the closest thing, of course, I think all of us, like we discussed last time we talked, try to find an image that is most like what we saw, and I don't think any of us has found anything that is just dead on. But the closest thing that I can come up with that reminds me of what I saw is the werewolf from American Werewolf in London. Of course, that one was on all fours. Mine was not. It was bipedal. But the legs were human-looking, my opinion. But I was frozen. I couldn't do nothing. I couldn't speak. I couldn't move. But the eyes were, a lot of people say, you know, they yellow eyes and stuff like that. But to me, it's like looking at your dog. I mean, it's puppy dog eyes, I guess you could say. But they didn't have that sweetness to them. That's for sure. He was not a happy camper. I think I surprised him as much as he surprised me. He proceeded to not hurdle the fence. This was a 5-foot barbed wire fence. He didn't hurdle it. He dove over it, and on the other side, our pasture, that part of the pasture anyway, was covered in what we call love grass down here. And it grows to about 3.5, sometimes 4 feet tall. He hit the ground on all fours, and it was just a smooth transition, like there was no effort at all. I saw the grass move. If you've ever seen any of the documentaries, you know, National Geographic stuff, and you know they'll show the big cats moving through the grass, and you can just see the grass moving. That's what it looked like, and it was real fast, and I saw the grass move for about 10 or 15 yards, and then nothing. At that point, I kind of had a decision to make because he had took the path that I was planning on taking back to the house. I really didn't relish the idea of following him, so I took the long way, which was all road. I figured, well, if nothing else, at least I can see him coming. Maybe a swing in, not that I thought it would do any good. But I made it back to the house and came in, and in my house, my mom had one golden rule, and it was no guns in the kitchen. And that's a country home for you, I guess. I came in, I walked in the kitchen, I set my gun down on the kitchen table and just kind of fell in a chair. And she turned around, she was going to scold me. And all I remember her saying was, you know, oh my God, you know, you're white as a ghost. I tried to tell her what had happened, and I literally could not speak. I don't know. I guess the only thing I can say is I was in shock. My sister lived next door to us. She called my sister, and she came over, and they sat down with me, and that part of it is kind of it's a blur, them talking to me. I don't remember what was said or anything, but during that time, but it took them about 45 minutes to calm me down enough where I could actually talk and tell them what happened. And when I told them what happened, you know, they were kind of probably wanted to ask me what I was smoking, but I was so intent that what I had seen, and I wasn't going to change my story. That's for sure. I think they kind of, you know, like most people do, just kind of take it with a grain of salt. Maybe, you know, my imagination played tricks on me or something. You know, you just got spooked and, you know, didn't see what you thought you saw, but you just saw something. Maybe it was a big dog, is what they said. After that, I kind of stuck around the house for a while. I didn't have any interest in really going out anymore. I wouldn't go out unless, you know, me and my mom went fishing, but there was a place she liked about 10 miles away, and I would go with her, but I think I went more with her just out of protection-wise, I guess. I don't know what I was thinking. But this thing had wanted me, and it wanted to do something to me. There wouldn't have been no stopping it. I don't think anything less than a well-placed shot from a 30-06 was even slowed it down, to be honest with you. Chest and the arms and this thing was just massive. I was pretty much had pinned myself up and just really wouldn't leave the real near facility of the house, you know, or area of the house for about 6 months. And I finally got to thinking about it, and I got mad at myself because I almost felt like I was being bullied, I guess, because I was letting this thing dictate what I was going to do and not do. It kind of made me mad. I guess for lack of a better term, decided I was going to start doing stuff again about 6 months later. I went on a few hunting excursions and camping and stuff like that. Didn't have any incidents at all. Then one time I was going hunting, and I had this place that I just absolutely loved to hunt. It's about 2 miles from my house. And so, boy, he had owned the property. I think he had like 2,000 acres. Well, one part of this place was he had cleared it off and used it as a hayfield, and the other, it was divided by a fence. And the other, just right on the other side of the fence was brush so thick you couldn't, if you weren't traveling the game trails, you weren't going to get through it. It was amazing hunting, and you would walk through there, and you'd be traveling the game trails, and you'd come up on a clearing, and they varied in size, you know, anything from just enough room to lay a tent down to about the size of a house, and it just, you know, had a little prairie grass, you know, about 6 inches high in it. It was really neat. And that's where I went. And there was only 3 of us that hunted that place, and it was a set of twins that lived a couple of miles the other side of it. But I was just fixing there was an old deadfall that had fallen across the fence that I used all the time to go over the fence, and I was just about to jump up on that old log and jump over and take off down the Grand Trail. And I heard something walking back in the brush, and of course you couldn't see 3 feet into this stuff. I heard something walking, and I could tell it was on 2 legs, so I hollered out. I figured it was, you know, one of the boys, and I hollered out, I said, "David, Doug, that one of y'all?" And it stopped. I said, "Hey," I said, "if that's y'all back there, you need to go give me a holler, you know, let me know you're back there." And it just shifted its weight. I said, "Look, if whoever's back there, if you don't say something, I'm going to shoot." Didn't do any good, and nothing, no response. So I fired a round off up in the air. And what happened next, I didn't see. I didn't wait around. This thing sounded like a bull coming through there. It was just, you could hear branches breaking, and it was, I tucked tail and run. I'm not too proud. I did. I tucked tail and ran the whole 2 miles back to the house, never looked back. A few years later, I didn't tell anybody about that. I was like, well, they probably thought I was crazy the first time, and they don't believe me now. So I never said anything to anybody, really. One of the strange things is, it's like, I think it was you that said it on your interview, actually, was, you know, when we have these things happen to us, we normally do one or two things. We become infatuated with it and want to find out anything about it, anything you can grab, watch, read, you know, listen to, whatever, about, you know, what this thing might be, and you're trying to get your head wrapped around it. And that's what I did, and anything, and I couldn't come up with any, back then, you know, I hadn't never heard nothing about any Dogman or anything. It was just, only thing I knew to call it was a werewolf. Ever since then, I just, you know, anything I could find that's remotely werewolf or Dogman or whatever, I kind of became an obsession with me. But a few years after that, I was out with some buddies of mine, a fellow that's now pretty much my best friend. He's a policeman. We were sitting around, maybe had a few beers one night, and everybody got kind of telling stories back and forth. And my old tongue got kind of loosened up and told my story. Of course, everybody's like, "Oh, whatever, you know, that didn't happen." My buddy, he got real quiet after things kind of broke up, you know, and he kind of pulled me aside. And I asked him, I said, "Man, what's wrong with you? You got awful quiet." He goes, "Man," he goes, "I ain't told nobody about this." He says, "I was driving home one night, and come out of the bar ditch, basically, up beside my car. And he said, that was the biggest, I thought then it was the biggest wolf or dog I'd ever seen in my life. He said, it come right up beside the car, and I was doing about 45, and it was pacing the car, almost loping, and just looking in the window at me every once in a while. He said, I kicked it up to about 55 miles an hour, and it finally just veered off and run off down in the creek bottom. And that's the only person I've ever met that, personally met that had any encounter that even remotely like, what I had. We still talk about it from time to time, and we actually got the harebrained idea to go hunt the thing down one time, but it never materialized. We're both ex-military, and we made the equipment list in the whole 9 yards. We thought we were loaded for bear. A few incidents that happened before my encounter even happened took place. I guess it was a year or two before. I had a dog that got killed. He wasn't a big dog, but he kind of just disappeared, and we finally found him. Of course, he got to smell him, and we found him underneath the house, and it looked like somebody had held him up by his front legs and just gutted him. And my daddy, he said, well, it looks like he got into it with a bobcat and crawled up here under the house and died. At that point, I hadn't seen anything or nothing like that. I just, what Daddy says, it's, he knows more than I do, And so we just kind of wrote it off and, went and buried him. And back in talking to you, kind of jogged some memories and stuff. You asked me about animals being killed and all that kind of stuff. And thinking back, I would hear about the occasional calf or a horse would fall and our colt would go missing or something like that. They always wrote it off as a cougar. We'd have a cougar mountain lion come through the area every once in a while. That's what it got wrote off as. Now, like I said, after trying to learn everything I can about these things and listen to all these other people's encounters and talking to you, and you kind of start putting two and two together, and you kind of realize that this thing was around a lot longer than just that one encounter or two encounters that I had. My sister, she still lives on that old family place, and she keeps big old dogs and kind of keep everything at bay out there. Because, she has some chickens come up missing every once in a while. But I haven't heard any reports or anything out that way, but and I wish if anybody had anything, I'd like to hear some reports from Texas and, make sure that me and my buddy we're not out here on an island by ourselves.
Well, I can tell you right now, there are many reports in Texas, probably far more than you care to know about. Not that probably makes you feel any better. But there are.
I'd like to hear some. I mean, just to, see if, because, I've heard, there's different types now and stuff like that. And we talked a little bit about that. I'm still trying to figure out exactly what type that I saw, I don't think it was the ultra-aggressive super soldier one that they talk about, but because I think if that was the case, I'd have had a bigger problem than I did. But I have to tell you, I really am thankful for what you're doing. It gives people like yourself and me and others an avenue that we can at least. I think it's therapeutic. I mean, it's at least getting it off your chest and getting it out there, and maybe, I mean, you're going to take some heat, and I guess, we're kind of used to that. If we tell our story, we, kind of get looked at cross-eyed, but, there's people out there too that sympathize with you, and you do realize that you're not alone. And that's one thing I really did realize when I talked to you, that hey, this is real. You didn't imagine this, and there's a person has problems dealing with it. I mean, I've seen some scary stuff in my life, accidents and stuff like that. It's nothing that it's a different kind of being scared, that's for sure. And I really want to thank you for what you're doing. I think you're very brave in doing what you're doing.
Oh, well, thank you so much, Jay. I'm not the only person doing this. It was Vic Cundiff with Dogman Encounters and Bigfoot Eyewitness Radio. He actually interviewed me, which I think you went and listened to that interview. If it wasn't for Vic, I probably wouldn't be doing this. Vic, it took months of me thinking about it and, thinking, could I really do this? Would I be good at it? And Vic just kept encouraging me, saying, you'll be great at this, you need to do this, just, trust me. And I have to say, it seems like he's right. I mean, you're always going to have some people that are naysayers or just don't like you or for whatever reason. And, that's fine. That's people. But I will say the majority, which I haven't been doing this very long, but I have to say, and I want to say thank you to everyone listening, the majority of people have been so wonderful to me. Even when, I did my interview with Vic, people were so warm and friendly and supportive, and I really needed that because I was so like you. Because when I found Vic, I'm telling you, Jay, I was floored. I couldn't believe people were talking about this. I was like, are you kidding me? Because I told Vic, every once in a while I would get on the internet and I would do a search for werewolf or, just wolfman, wolf people, which is what some Native Americans call them. And I could never find anything except for the silly, movies but I never found what Vic has done until I did a search when it was last winter, and I'm telling you, I was hooked. I was blown away. I couldn't believe people were talking about it. I was like, oh my gosh. And I always knew with my encounter, it had to have happened to other people, but I didn't know how to find them, and it never even dawned on me to use the internet to find these people. But, honestly, I don't think I would have even stepped out if it wasn't for Vic, because he is really, he's the one that started all of this. He's the, what's the word I'm looking for? I can't think of the word I'm looking for. Gosh, what's that word? It's on the tip of my tongue. I can't think. Anyway, he's the one that started all of this. He was the one with enough fortitude to come forward and go, okay, these people need a platform to talk as well as Bigfoot people. Because, honestly, if it wasn't for Vic, I would have never used the internet because I would have never thought people would have come forward.
I ran across it by accident. I'm kind of a Bigfoot buff. I mean, and of course, when you have an encounter like that, it's the whole cryptid thing in general just, really perks your ears up, and, but the Bigfoot thing has really interested me, and I was listening to some Bigfoot stuff, and I saw Dogman. What? And I started listening to the stuff. I was like you, I'm hooked, and now I'm, taking every story I can and trying to learn everything, and I tell you what, getting a hold of you is really a blessing. I mean, it just being to, I don't know, openly talk about it, because and I was having a talk with myself the other day, and I said, so, you're almost 50 years old, and you're well established. Why do you care what people think?
You know, and I think, Jay, so many of us do that, and it's not you care what people think. It's you know what you saw. You know you're not crazy, and you just want someone to say, Jay, you're not crazy. And that's basically what I told you is, Jay, you're not crazy. You know, people are seeing this. This is not it's not a figment of your imagination. It's not something you dreamed up. It's not something you hallucinated. You saw a dogman, or as some people call them still, werewolves. You saw something that in some ways, I was talking to someone today who's going to do an interview. It's like you're a part of this very small elite club that you didn't ask to be a part of, and most of us looking back would probably say, okay, didn't want to be a part of it, okay? But yeah, but if you think about it, in some ways, it's brought us all together. You are now meeting people, and I hope you continue to meet people that you would have never have met or talked to before. I always encourage everybody to stay in touch with me, and I hope you will. I mean, it really does. It's like something bad that went on, but it brings us all together. So there's a silver, I tell people, of course I don't call it a silver lining, I call it a platinum lining, because I've met some great people because of this encounter. I really have. And then the other side of it is what I was telling the girl who's going to be doing an interview with me. In some ways, we're a part of this very elite club. And if you really think about it, as scary as the dogmen are, in some ways they're really beautiful. It's something that very few people are ever going to get to witness. Ever.
You're right.
So, you know, in some ways it's incredible. It really is.
Yeah, I think that's an understatement.
Right.
You know, and I think, you know, talking to you and like you said, you know, you're meeting people and stuff like that have had the same experiences. Basically, it's, you know, the small circle that you talked about, I think it's basically ended up as a support group. Because, and I think all of us needed it, that, you know, that are coming forward. Else, why would we come forward? You know? You're
right. I mean, there is so many people that, you know, I tell people, I don't care if you contact me or Vic or Amanda or whoever you want to contact. Britton Solwyn does this too, and he's wonderful. There's so many, you know, people out there. I know Bear, I can't remember their names. That's terrible, but it's the, what is it, the Bigfoot Outlaw Radio Group. You know, they talk about, Bear and Kumbo. Oh, forgive me if y'all listen to this. I'm so sorry. Remember, guys, I'm new. But, and I'll listen to them. I love them. They're hilarious. They crack me up. But, you know, it is. You really want someone to tell you it's okay. You're not crazy. You know, and this is what I tell people also. I would rather people call me crazy than to tell me, well, you didn't see that. Or, you know, say, well, you had to see something else. No, I didn't. I'm not a liar, because that's calling me a liar, and that upsets me, because I'm not a liar, and I'm not seeking attention. I would have kept my secret. If it hadn't been for Vic Cundiff, I would have never, ever, ever have told a soul other than the few people that know, you know, in my life. This is not something I was going to tell the world, which is basically what I've done now. I've told the world. Because I didn't think anyone would ever believe me. That's why it's so comforting that I meet people like you and my other guests. And I met Vic. Because you do have somebody that when you have these nightmares or you have these problems, because you do have problems from it. Because it's still, like we were talking last night, it's so hard. Like, you know, I said, your eyes are telling your brain, you see it, right? And your brain's going, yeah, but it don't exist. Well, I don't care. You see it, right? You know, you have this weird inner battle, you know, and it's not funny. It's really not, because in the moment, we're all terrified. But
oh, yeah.
You do, you know, and you said and everybody I talk to has that battle. You have it, I have it, everybody has it, because your brain's going, don't exist, and your eyes are going, well, I don't care if it don't exist, right there it stands, you know, so.
Yeah, you have so many conversations with yourself, I mean, you really do, and it's like you say, you know, you're trying to get your mind around it. With me, I went through a phase where, of self-doubt, that did I really that? And try to tell yourself that maybe it could have been this. Maybe I just did imagine it, But I think that's just part of the I guess you call it a coping mechanism, just trying to rationalize everything.
It is. Your brain, when you see something that's not supposed to exist, they say your brain automatically tries to figure out what it could be. I did the same thing. Everybody's experience is different, and the wild thing that we're now finding out is we believe that there's more than 7 different variations of this thing. There might be more, a lot more. So
we have no idea at this point.
Right, and the more people that come forward is how we're going to learn. And that's what I tell people is just keep an open mind. Okay, maybe you don't believe, someone's encounter, but at least keep an open mind to it. Keep an open mind to what they're saying. And a lot of times with people, you can hear it in their voice. Like, I'm sure people could hear it in your voice because you do stutter I guess it's just still that fear mechanism kicking in, that when we start to recall the memory, it still just terrifies us. Because still, like you said, you're going, was it really there? Did I really see it?
Yeah.
But we do know it was there. We saw it. And we were lucky. I tell people all the time, we were lucky. Because, like I told you, I think those of us who aren't attacked, you very well could have interrupted that thing feeding. I'm really beginning to think a lot of us, sometimes when we survive this, it is because it had just fed. And it knows we're not a threat. We can't hurt them. They're working with way more than we've got. Even if you got a gun, it's still working with more. It's faster, it's bigger, it's stronger. Teeth and claws. Hello, we don't have a prayer. Trust me, I get it. I totally understand. And I'm just so happy people like you, because you're a good, decent man. You have a good job. You're not crazy. You're not living out of a box. But you know what? I'm not even going to say that, because even somebody living in a box doesn't mean they're crazy. But you're not, in a cuckoo hospital. You know what I'm saying. So
I'm not wearing tinfoil on my head, so I'm good.
Right. So, and we need people like this, because you said, like, your friend was a policeman. I have an encounter that I have to read here soon that involves a state trooper right here in North Carolina who had an encounter. And it's just an amazing story, but he doesn't want to tell it right now himself because, well, he's still a state trooper. So I understand that. But he still wants people to hear his story because he thinks it's important that people hear it. So I'm very appreciative to anybody, whether you come on here and we do an interview, or you send me a letter or a phone call. You can call me up and say, well, hey, Danielle, can you put this into a story and read it out there because I can't or I don't want to do it? Sure, I'll do that. As long as you're being honest with me, and I do question people because you have to. I don't want to put anything out there that isn't the truth. But all I want to do is help people. And Jay, there's people that call me and they just want to tell me their story. And Vic told me that would happen, and I thought, you're crazy. But he's right. No, not that you're crazy, Vic, please. Don't get upset with me. But, I just couldn't believe, that there would be stories like that. But there is. There are people that call you, and sometimes it's so terrifying that in some circumstances, what happens is either so terrifying and so unbelievable that it's kind of like, can I put this out there? Because people can be so judgmental, and I hate that. Because if people weren't so judgmental, we could get a lot more stories out there. But as long as people keep naysaying and wanting to start arguments or wanting to belittle people, nobody wants to go through that. Nobody's going to do that. And you can't blame them. You can't blame them for that. So I just love the fact that people like you, though, are coming forward. And I want to thank you for coming forward and telling your story, because I think your story is very interesting. And getting back to your story, I didn't know that your sister still lived out there. Are there still strange things going on out there?
You know, like I said, really the only thing that I've heard from out there is they'll hear a howler once in a while, and they can't really, put anything to it as far as, what's indigenous to the area. But she's had well, they weren't chickens actually. Now that I think about it, they were guineas. She had gotten some guineas, and they all just vanished. They just disappeared. But for the most part, the dogs that she keeps are huge, and they'll keep anything at bay. And it's like anything else, when she brings the dogs in, like for a night or something. And I think these things are very opportunistic, like any predator. They're going to take the easy meal when they can get it. I haven't heard anything that is. Of course, I don't think anybody would talk about it. To be honest with you, and it's like back in the day they wrote it off as a mountain lion attack or a pack of wild dogs or something. And I have heard her. We've been out there and been talking about stuff disappearing and stuff, and she'll say they got a pack of wild dogs running around, or and I know her dog. Well, in fact, her dogs, come to think of it, have been in a few scraps, come back beat up the next morning. And when I say she's got big dogs, I'm talking Rhodesian Ridgebacks, which are bred to hunt lions.
Yeah, I know what those are. They're huge.
Yeah, and that's what she has patrolling her property.
Wow.
And so I think that's one of probably the biggest reason that she doesn't have any more activity at the house. Plus, there's a lot more people out there now. It's the places. We keep moving out, and expanding. And I think that's gonna. And that's another thing. I think that's the reason you're hearing a lot more. Not just the internet, but I think it's because people have just started moving out. Into those rural areas more. There's more and more people, and it's nothing. It's no different than like a shark attack. More people you put in the water, the more shark attacks you're going to have. Well, the more people you put out in these creatures' areas, the more encounters you're going to have.
I tell people the same thing. Because people always say, well, why is it we're suddenly hearing about them? It's not. They've always been there. There's always been stories. It's just people are very tight-lipped, and you being a Southerner too, we're tight-lipped anyway. But even more so, back in the, good Lord, up until probably the 70s, anybody you would talk to as far as like our great-grandparents or grandparents or even our parents, they were all very tight-lipped. They just didn't talk about anything like that because you didn't want to embarrass your family or, get a bad name for yourself, and your family would warn you, don't be telling crazy stories. And so, that's something very common, especially in the South. But you were definitely right, and I tell people that it's just an explosion of Dogman stories all of a sudden. You're going to see them more. You're going to have more encounters because we're encroaching on their territory. We've moved into their backyard. So, yeah, you're going to have encounters. You're going to have a lot of encounters. And sometimes it's more than just an encounter. Sometimes it turns pretty bad.
I think it's just a matter of time before the lid gets blown off of it. Personally. I know. I think that, I think a lot of it's being swept under the rug. But I think it's just a matter of time before it's not going to be able to. Whoever's doing it's not going to be able to do it. And so easy, and the lid's going to come off this thing. And how many years, it was 30, 40 years ago? That's very, very recent. The giant squid was a myth. Yeah? So were rogue waves.
Well,
science is being proved, wrong or different or however you want to say it, all the time, every day.
Yeah.
They find out something new,
The giant panda bear, it's been a while, but even mountain gorillas, I mean, there's just so many things they just found 2 new species of monkeys, some type of chimp or monkey in the Amazon, that there were stories for many years and nobody believed it, and they've just now discovered that, yeah, they're there. In fact, I saw some pictures of them here recently because I thought that was, kind of curious. But, it just goes to prove that these things can exist anywhere, and people can be jumping up and down telling other people that they see them. But until and it's really not even scientists. I tell people, it's until the government pretty much says, yep, they exist. And I would like to think like you, but honestly, I don't think they're ever going to do it for these or Bigfoot, because to most people, these would be monsters. They're not. We know they're not. They're an animal. But I think people would panic. They would just really, it would be bad. It would be terrible. It would be mass hysteria. It would be horrible. And then you would have others that would want to protect it. So it's kind of weird, but it's almost like, I think the government knows they're there. But in some ways, by the government not saying, okay, we know they're there, they're protecting them in a weird way. I mean, they are. It's kind of hard to think of it that way. But if you really sit down and think about it, they are. Because if they come forward and they tell everybody this, imagine the people that would try to hunt them. I mean, and I don't think that's fair either. I don't think they should be hunting down. I mean, of course, like any animal, there's some that probably should be put down. But no, they've been here. They have a right to be here. They have a right to be here as much as we do.
I wish more people would realize that we're infringing on their land, on their environment, their home, not the other way around. And they need to be, they're like any other animal, they need to be treated with respect. And, of course, as far as I'm concerned, that all started with the Native Americans, but that's a whole other issue. And I also think that's a big reason, the lack of respect that they were shown many, many years ago, is why the Native American people are so tight-lipped about what they know. And I can't blame them. I don't blame them at all. I wish it had been different. I really, really do. I wish the relationship between the Anglos and the Native Americans had been a whole lot better. But we can't change history. We can change what happens in the future, and I hope we can do that with these animals that are the ones that we know exist, and also the ones that are kind of on the fringe out there, and learn to respect them and treat them that way, and not just hunt them down and kill them to extinction like we've done in the past.
You're right about that, and there's some elders that aren't very happy with what I'm doing, and their biggest thing is, nobody's going to believe me, nobody's going to listen to me anyway. I say, okay, that might be true, but maybe just one person will listen, and maybe, who knows, it might save one person's life, and if it saves one person's life, then that's enough for me. I'll be happy with that. And there is something you told me in the pre-interview. What did you find later on that you kind of, like you said, put 2 and 2 together and started coming up with 4? What did you find once that was kind of odd, but at the time you didn't think it was odd, but now looking back you think that was pretty odd on your property? Or was it your property? It was really the neighbor's property, wasn't it?
No, it was the place right next to the place I used to hunt. There was some people that I guess they abandoned the property. I'm not really sure, because as far as I knew, I never ran into anybody there. But it was adjacent to the place that I used to hunt that I was talking about. But yeah, I found I think it was 3 or 4 almost intact horse skeletons. I mean, looked like they had, they were just there, and at that time, being a stupid kid, I just thought it was cool to have a horse skull in the rock garden, I didn't even think about it, even years afterwards. I didn't think about it until I talked to you, and you were like, what? Wait a minute,
Yeah, I thought that was odd just because me being a horse person, I guess, golly, in my lifetime, I've owned probably over 20-some horses. We bury our horses. We don't ever just, we don't do that. I don't know of any horse person that does that. If a horse dies, you bury it. That's just common knowledge. It's, you know, for most horse people, and you know this, being from Texas, to us, they're big dogs. So you're going to bury your best friend. So that was really weird to me. When you told me that, I was like, say what? I was like, huh? I was like, that didn't make sense. I was like, no, I don't think, that didn't sound right to me.
Yeah, and it was, you know, and it was really strange because, I mean, they weren't scattered to the four winds as you would think they would be. Because, I mean, you don't, you know, and you hear about this all the time. Why haven't we found a skeleton, or why haven't we found remains? You know, traipsing through the woods, you don't find that much. You know, because
You made
it gets scattered.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. You made a really great comment in our pre-interview, and I'd like for you to say it again. When people always say, "Well, how could you miss that deer?"
You know, these people they talk about, you know, well, why haven't, you know, if you shot one, why haven't you found it, or why didn't you bring it back, or whatever, you know. And anybody that's hunted for any length of time has pulled a bad shot on an animal. You're not going to get a direct kill shot every time. And take, like you said, deer, for example. You wound a deer and try to track it down. It's 9 times out of 10, it's not an easy chore. You know, if you don't know what you're doing, you're not going to find it. And animals survive by hiding. You know, they know it's instinct. And they're a lot better at it hiding than we are finding, you know. I know the running joke on Bigfoot is the hide and seek champion, but it's true. You know, I mean, if you take somebody that's a, you know, a decent amount about camouflage, and if you know what you're doing, you can walk into the woods and have people walk right by you and never see you, and actually be actively looking for you if you're good at it.
Oh, Jay, let me ask you this, because I know we've been talking for a while now. When you were talking about its legs and stuff, do you believe it was an animal you were looking at? I mean, do you think it was an animal, or do you think it was something other than an animal?
No, it was an animal. There's no doubt in my mind. I think its flesh and blood can be brought down, it can be killed, it can be hurt. It's just going to take a little bit more than average, because it's a big animal, you know? I mean...
Now, when you saw it barrel across the fence, I know it was on 2 legs, was it then on 4 when it went through the grass?
Yes, yeah, it dove over the fence. It was running on 2 legs, jumped and dove over the fence, and when it landed, it went on all 4s, and it was a very smooth transition. And then through the grass, and it was gone. Very fast. I think they spend most of the time on 4 legs. But I think it's only when they're investigating something. I think they're the same as us. I think they're like any other animal. They have a fight or flight, you know, sense. And it's like a bear. He's not going to get up on 2 legs unless if they register a threat, what do? They go up on 2 legs.
Right.
They try to look as big and scary as possible.
Right.
You know, and I think these things are kind of the same way, but I think they're more at home on 4 legs because they definitely move faster on 4 legs.
What was going on with its eyes? Because I know it was daylight, and we had talked a little bit about that because there was no eye shine. So what color was its eyes when you saw it?
Well, it's like I said, it was like puppy dog eyes. You know, it's weird as it sounds. You know, I know when he faced me, and he didn't turn his whole body. He was in stride, and he just turned his head. The lips pulled back, and nose crinkled, and the eyes narrowed. Firing a warning shot at me. I think is what he was doing. Don't follow me. It's going to get ugly if you do. I didn't see anything strange about his eyes, as far as any other canine eyes. I mean, they look just brown to me, or dark.
Well, and that's what we talked about too, because I do have people tell me daylight encounters that a lot of times they're either brown or black, or sometimes they might be the color of a wolf's, because wolf's eyes do have, strange shades to them. But we talk about these eye colors. What we're really talking about is eye shine. We're not talking about the actual color of their eyes. We're talking about what their eyes look like when it's hit with light. I don't think a lot of people get that what we really do or what we're really talking about is the eye shine on these creatures.
Right.
When we're talking the reds and the yellows and the green and the blue, and some people say white tint. I guess I just want people to understand that is we're not really talking about their eye color, we're talking about their eye shine color. I want to ask you, Jay, even though it's a little late to be asking it, because I know you are a big hunter, how sure are you about what you saw? As far as you're sure it was not a bear or someone in a suit or anything else out there that a naysayer would say, well, hey, it might have been this. I guess what I'm saying is, how sure are you about what you saw?
110%. There's no way. One, we don't have bears down here. Not in this part of Texas. We don't have them. Number two, as far as somebody in a suit, when this thing looked at me, there's no way that, one, why would somebody be out in the middle of nowhere, or, at that point, it was 20 miles from the nearest, or 10 miles from the nearest town, at this random spot, on a dirt road. That makes no sense. And two, if that was it couldn't have been a mask and articulate the way this thing articulated its face. There's no way.
And trust me, I'm not asking you that because I don't believe you. I believe you 150%. I just want, the people out there to understand that when we come forward with these stories, we are absolutely, positively sure about what we have witnessed.
Oh, there's no doubt. There's no doubt in my mind. It's funny. I meant to tell you this last night, but a lot of times, some people deal with stuff in different ways, and I actually gave this thing a name for a long time, as just kind of putting humor, towards it, and just trying to. I called him Fred for a long time.
That's funny. You should have named him Wiley or Willie the Werewolf.
Wiley Cody, that'd have been a good one.
But let me ask you this, because we've been talking a while. How has this changed you, Jay? How has this affected your life?
I think it made me, at that age, to think you're 10 foot tall and bulletproof and you can do anything. It's almost a scared straight kind of type of thing, I guess. You kind of come face to face with your own mortality. But it also opens your eyes to the possibilities of what is out there, what else is out there, and what's possible. I think it made me a lot less skeptical on a lot of things. It stepped up me being aware of my surroundings a lot too. Just going out, even going, taking the family going out to a state park or whatever. Even today, when I go out camping, I don't go camping without something within reach, be it a buoy or a gun within reach or something. If I can't take a gun for some reason, like in a state park or whatever, there's a knife under my pillow or within arm's reach.
Well, I don't blame you there at all. I think anyone going camping if at all possible, you definitely need to have some type of weapon on you, even though we've determined a lot of times guns don't seem to deter these creatures.
Right.
But it does seem like air horns will definitely send one running because they don't like the way they sound. It hurts their ears.
Right. I think your best bet as far as camping and protection goes really is, like you said, an air horn and some bear spray.
Now, we have determined that maybe bear spray is not great with them because if you injure them, they're very vindictive. They'll come after you. Yeah, we tell people air horn. Use an air horn. That's about the best thing, or a really bright light. They don't seem to like bright light very much either. So if you can blind it and then hurt its ears, and at least you're not physically injuring it, as far as creating it serious pain from something that it really saw you do. Hopefully there's still enough animal in it that it doesn't really understand the light and the horn.
Right.
You'll be able to get away, and it's going to send it running because it's going to want to get away from that noise because it's hurting its ears.
Yeah.
It's just not going to.
Hindsight being 20/20, that's what you should have done, is laid on the horn.
Actually, I've had people ask me that. It seemed like the more noise we made, the worse it got. So. I think it would have agitated it more because a horn is not like an air horn. A car horn is nothing like an air horn. So I think it would have just made it angrier. It didn't have that shrill pierce, which I don't know what that is, but at least
decibel.
Right, the decibel it would need to have made the creature flee. It would have just angered it. It would have made it matter. Because it was like the more noise we made, it just seemed to irritate it. In my instance. So, but I have been, asked that. But I am going to get an air horn. Especially since I'm going to be investigating and going out and trying to investigate some sites where these creatures are. I'm definitely going to get me an air horn or get, several air horns. So I'm going to make sure I'm protected. And I'm still going to request a gun. I'm going to have a gun because it's just too big of a chance.
Yeah, I'm packing a big sidearm. Regardless, it might not help, but it's going to make me feel better.
Right. If it comes down to it, I'm like you. It just makes me feel better. It just does. It just makes me feel better because if it really comes to a fight, I'm not going down without a fight. It'll probably kill me, but it's going to know I was there.
Right.
It's going to know that I died trying, I guess.
Yeah. I'm not going to make an easy meal for it.
Exactly.
He's going to have an easy enough catching my crap butt, but I ain't going to make it easy for him once he does.
Right. And the other thing I wanted to ask you is, before, I know both your parents were lost, and I'm very sorry for your loss when you were quite young.
Okay.
You had said that you had spoken to your mother one more time about that, and that second talk y'all had when you were older, what was her disposition then?
She was a lot more receptive, because like my story hadn't changed, and being older, I was still, this is what happened. I wasn't pulling your leg, and I know this is what I saw, and I heard my sister both actually. At that point it was like, well, you saw what you saw. I'm just glad it didn't get any worse. I'm glad you made it back, and that was really the attitude they had. They were just glad that nothing else, the encounter didn't go any, south, as they say.
Do you think your sister, considering she lives out there now, do you think she kind of might keep that in the back of her mind?
Oh, I know she does.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah, I know she does.
So,
when I go out there, I'll jokingly say, you ain't seen Fred around, have you?
So they know who Fred is.
Yeah. And she'll be like, no, I think the dog's keeping away, and so. That's the attitude she has, so.
Well, I commend her for that because I think your sister knows you would never lie to her. So she keeps that in the back of her mind for her safety, and I definitely, that's awesome. That is absolutely fantastic. I'm so glad that she, shall I say, heed your warning about living out there and just being safe and careful.
Yeah, her husband's a lot more, oh, right, whatever type thing, but she knows I saw what I saw now, because that was, 25, 30 years ago, I still was, still sticking to my guns, so.
And I hope it doesn't happen, but I hope for her husband's sake he doesn't turn the corner one day and he gets a rude awakening living out there.
Yeah.
Seeing one. He'll be calling you up going, what did you see again?
Yeah. I was introduced to Fred.
Yeah, that wouldn't be good. I think I met your buddy today. Could you come and get him? Well, Jay, I have really enjoyed having you on the show, and I'm so glad you come forward, and I want to thank you again, and I know the listeners thank you also. Is there anything you would like to say in closing to the listeners as far as your experience or just anything, Jay, anything?
Really the one thing that I want to put out there, and it was a stupid idea that I had, and I didn't follow through with it, and the only reason I didn't follow through with it is, we couldn't get the logistics worked out, but like I said, hindsight being 2020, it's a good thing we didn't. Don't go hunting these things. They're bigger and badder than you can ever imagine, and treat them with the same respect hopefully you treat other animals, and just remember that, we're impeding on their home, and not the other way around. They were here a long time before us. And hopefully it doesn't come down to, somebody has to make a decision, you or them, but, be aware of your surroundings, and I think that little piece of advice right there will take care of most of the problems. If something doesn't feel right, doesn't smell right, doesn't look right, it ain't right, turn back. The best advice I can give.
Well,
there's a little voice in your head, and what a lot of people call gut feeling, listen to it. It's very rarely wrong.
Well, and you heard it here, folks. This is a big man from what I was told. You're, 6'2", Jay? A big old Texan we got here on the show tonight, folks, telling you, listen to your instincts. Don't ignore them. So he's telling you, don't go looking for these things. That's what I always say. Don't look for these things. They're not to be toyed with. Don't mess. Well, we've had fun here tonight, Jay, and I hope you don't have another encounter, but if you do, please call me back. As you know, I would definitely want to hear all about it.
You'll be the first to know, and I really want to thank you for letting me do this. It's really helped.
Oh, well, and like I said, Jay, I hope you stay in touch. I love meeting people like you. I love doing the show. I will probably do this for as long as I can. So, I'm just very appreciative for people like you, that you trust me or enough to at least give me a chance and call me up. And like I tell everybody, talk with me for a little while. See if you're comfortable, if you like me, just even as a person. And then we move forward. And if you want to tell your story on my show, great. And if you don't, I always tell people, I don't care. Just get it out there. Call Vic, call Amanda, call whoever. But if you have a story to tell, please tell it. Because people like Jay and me and others, we need to hear that there's others like us. It's so important to us. Because I didn't mention this, but I meant to. I'm sure when you told your best friend Jay your story, and then he told you what he had encountered, I'm sure that made you feel so much better.
Well, I think, it not only made me feel better, you could almost see a weight being lifted off of him.
Oh, I'm sure. especially in his profession. I mean, he probably had nobody to talk to about his encounter.
Yeah, he hadn't uttered a word of it, and it was like, I'm not crazy.
Oh, yeah. I'm going to tell him I said, you're not crazy. You're not crazy.
I will pass it along. Thank you.
But, well, Jay, thank you so much. I think you gave some really words of wisdom to everybody out there listening. And if you will hold on 1 minute, Jay, I'm just going to close this show out.
I'll be here.
I want to thank you again, Jay, for coming on Dogman Diaries and for telling your story. I know that I and all the listeners really appreciate it. And I want to thank everyone for listening. I truly appreciate everybody's support. And I know that my guests also appreciate y'all's support. Premiere week is not gone as I had wished, but I hope that everyone will subscribe to Dogman Diaries and stay here with me as long as I can keep putting the stories out for you guys, because I definitely love doing the stories. As always, if you have a Dogman story, or you have a friend or a family member who has a story, then please contact me. Attention Danielle, I have a Dogman story at dogmandiaries@gmail.com, or on Facebook at Dogman Diaries, or you can even tweet me. Here at Dogman Diaries, we will never judge you or your story. I am a believer because I'm also a survivor. If you're like me and people inquire about why you're so afraid of the dark, say, I'm not afraid of the dark. I'm afraid of what could be lurking in the dark. Have a great week, friends. Till next time, be safe and be blessed. My thoughts and prayers are with you all. Good night.